Thank you for joining me, everyone. Charles Moscowitz here. Welcome to the program. Oh, looks like I'm live again on TikTok. That's nice. Monday through Friday, 12 noon and beyond. I was going to have Dan Hughes on today to do a little guitar session with me. I thought I'd do something different. I'm kind of a hack, a guitar player who want to be from way back when. But Dan and I were going to jam a bit. Dan is a very good English musician who occasionally he and I get together to do a jam through Zoom. But looks like we got our times mixed up. He's in England, so I think that I'm going to have to reschedule it. So I'm going to do an open line segment at this time. You're welcome to join the program on to discuss any issue you care to get into, as long as it's within the propriety of community standards, of course. And also, we have to additionally consider YouTube censorship. Um, anyway, the number is 617 396 4958. 617 396 4958. So, what is on your mind this afternoon? I'm concerned about the continual holding of political prisoners by the United States right outside of Washington, D.C. This is unprecedented in American history. I mean, I suppose that the last time something like this happened was during the Civil War, when President Lincoln suspended habeas corpus or portions of it in order to hold copperheads, pro-Southern activists, uh, detain them in prison without charge for a short period of time because we were dealing with a civil war. And I would assume the same thing happened in the Confederacy. Not since then has this happened. We assume that the habeas corpus rights were not suspended. So how is it then that people by the hundreds are now being held as political prisoners in Washington? What was their crime? Their crime was trespassing on January 6th at the US Capitol. There's evidence that has emerged and video evidence which shows that the Capitol Police let them in. Most people, the people who actually broke the window that's on video, those people I don't think have been charged. I think that they have been apparently classified as unindicted co-conspirators, which often means that they were FBI agents or they were at least working with the FBI. And there have been questions raised about whether or not after that the Capitol Police had stand down orders to let people in, because most of the people that went in were simply peacefully wandering around. And then when Congress was suspended due to a genuine pipe bomb threat at the Democratic and the Republican National Committee headquarters, which were across the street from the US Capitol, they then proceeded to wander into the US Senate chamber. Now, should they have been there? No. And they certainly were violating the law. You don't just walk into a federal building, even if you're let in. But the charges, for the most part, have been trespassing. And, these are people who were first time offenders. They were basically there just to protest or to support, actually, the Congress's attempt to certify the election and to support the fact that 7 states were contesting their placing of their election delegations. They were there to support that, and that was proceeding until it was interrupted by people who entered the Senate chamber, including the guy, the so-called QAnon shaman, the guy with the fuzzy hat and the plastic horns. And that raises the question of who benefited, cui bono. Who benefited was not President Trump, was not those who wanted to have an organized attempt to hear the evidence of why 7 states were being contested. who benefited was the Biden campaign. Now, I'm not going to get into a question of whether or not, I don't want to go too deep here because we are on YouTube, but I am going to just illustrate a bit the events leading up to that. And that is that according to the US Constitution, and according to precedent, which occurred going back to the Jefferson election of 1800, and which included the George W. Bush election of 2024, a state on January 6th, when both the Senate and the House convene to certify the delegates and certify the next president, the states can contest the seating of their delegation if they believe that there were improprieties, if they believe that, if they have a good reason to do so, if they believe that there had been some kind of a fraudulent event in their state. This was done in 2004. My own senator here from Massachusetts, Jim McGovern, sponsored such a contestation of, I believe, the state of Ohio. And so this has been done before. This isn't anything that was, seditious, like the left says now. Senators and representatives who sponsored this are now called terrorists and seditious, activists. Not at all. This is conventional. This is ordinary. This is constitutional. This is acceptable. What you do at that time, January 6th, and is you simply have to have one senator and one member of the House jointly sign a document requesting that a state not seat their delegation. And when that happens, that triggers a hearing that can last up to 2 hours, in which they present their case of why that delegation should not be seated. And that means laying out their evidence that there had been a problem with the seating of that delegation. And this was going to be happening on that day in 7 states. That was the 6 contested states, of course, that we all know about: Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona. And that they were going to be joined by a 7th state, that being New Mexico, where the citizens of that state had elected, or had attempted to elect, I should say, an alternative delegation. The delegation that was appointed by their respective governors was the Biden delegation. And that this was being contested, and that there were alternative delegations, Trump delegations, that were challenging that in all 7 of those states. Now, the fact of the matter is that on January 6th of the election, after the presidential election, that's when you have the opportunity to make that presentation. And all 7 states were lined up to make that presentation. The way it would work is that in alphabetical order, the president of the proceedings, who is also the vice president of the United States, calls out each state and asks for the delegation to step forward, whether they've been certified, and then there's a roll call and they are certified. And when they reach a delegation that is being contested, then you have the joint letter signed by one senator and one rep challenging the election, and that triggers the 2-hour hearing. So that's what was supposed to happen. And indeed, that's what was underway, as Arizona, which was the first state on the list alphabetically to contest their election, began to lay out their evidence. And it was stunning. I watched it on television. The whole country watched. Everyone was fine. I felt like, look, one way or another, we were finally going to have a forum where we could hear the evidence, if there was any, if there was reason to suspect. I mean, I had an open mind about it. I think everyone did. We had heard the noise from the Trump people. We had seen the cases being brought in court on the state level and on the Supreme Court level. And we observed the fact that all of those cases were rejected, not by evidence, but on technicalities. Only one or two of them were actually heard out of over 50 that were presented. So we didn't hear the evidence there. There was no chance to. That evidence never reached the inside of a courtroom where it could be presented. It was all shut down before it got there on technicalities. Our media had failed us. They did nothing to research the almost 1,000 affidavits of people who claim to be witness to problems. They, these affidavits, signed affidavits, by the way, are the equivalent of congressional testimony. When you sign an affidavit, you are doing so under the pain of perjury if you are lying, and perjury is a crime. I mean, you could end up going to jail or facing major fines for that. So you had almost 1,000 American citizens, particularly in these contested states, signing affidavits and telling their stories. The media did nothing to look into it. They didn't examine it. They didn't read the affidavits. They did nothing to research any of these questions or any of the interests, any of the events that occurred on election eve that many of us felt seemed odd. They did nothing to research it. All they did was dump crap on anyone who questioned it, and ridicule and mock and attack and question people's patriotism for questioning them. So we did not have a proper hearing on any of this alleged evidence. We don't know. And so many of us were finally looking forward to the last place where we could see the evidence, if there was any. And that was on January 6th in Congress. And it was happening. Arizona, the people were laying it out, and it was stunning, I may add. It was sensational. It was like, wow. And then all of a sudden, I had to step away for a minute. I was watching it on major network. All the networks were covering this. I had to step away. I came back about 5 or 10 minutes later to turn back in, and it was over. All you saw were, Trump supporters, storming the Capitol, and police there, and it just was horrible. And so you ask the question, who benefited by this? The Trump people lost everything. They lost their last opportunity to examine in an open forum where the whole country was watching under oath possible evidence of impropriety. And that was taken away. Not only was it taken away, but then the people that entered the Capitol were accused of violence and sedition, when in fact they weren't really violent. The only violence was the killing of Ashley Babbitt, who was shot in, point blank in cold blood. And that they were accused of being seditionists. This was after a year of violence in American cities where you had gangs of left-wing thugs, people who I would describe as, the shock troops of the Democratic Party, looting Black businesses, burning Black neighborhoods. You had an increase in the murder of Black people in the big cities, particularly Chicago, St. Louis, and New York. And that included children. And you had the media and government officials applaud. Oh, this is glorious. This is progress. We're told this is good. You had the entire Congress with Nancy Pelosi put on kente cloth and get down on one knee in the rotunda to celebrate this destruction of Black neighborhoods. So there was an atmosphere of sedition, if you will. And, you would think that, by the way, the city of New York and the police and the Capitol Police would have done a little bit of a better job of protecting the Capitol with the entire government there in session. They didn't. They had bike racks blocking people, which I find suspicious. It makes me wonder if it wasn't people that might have known this was happening and planned it because it benefited them. It shut down the hearing. But the end result was that not only was there a very official and very powerful attempt to somehow blame President Trump for this, claiming that he had incited violence, which is completely false and which has been proven to be false. His speech was recorded. But that was used as an excuse to censor him and take him down out of Twitter and Facebook, much at with the complaints of world leaders who were against this kind of censorship. And it also caused the takedown of Parler, which was a social network that was competing with Twitter and which was really moving up and doing very well. And the censorship of many of the rest of us. I'm worried right now that I'm going to be censored. I'm not. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm shut down any minute, frankly. But anyway, the fact is that they tried to blame Trump to the degree that they actually conducted another phony impeachment, even after he was out of office. And they just try to destroy his really total destruction of Trump as he was leaving. I think with a hope that he would never come back. And of course, now they're doing the same thing with this new hearing. We're going to have to endure yet another, basically another Trump impeachment, as once again, the same people that, I don't want to say what they were up to, but they're the same people that did the phony impeachments. They're going to trot out another one to try to claim that Trump or that people supported Trump were seditionists and they tried to overthrow the government, right? I mean, the guy with the fuzzy hat, he's there overthrowing the government. Okay, fine. And just like in the impeachment trials, you're going to have liberal Democrats come out and partisans and become famous and be featured on television and be held up as great heroes. Remember that military guy wearing his military uniform and complaining about Trump's foreign policy? That was his justification for supporting impeachment. The Vindman, I think his name was. We're going to have more of those types. People who had basically been waiting for their opportunity to shoot their mouth off and get praise, probably sell books. And it's going to be a complete farce. Another phony hearing. I mean, at least McCarthy had the stones to finally stand up and say, we're not participating, and he withdrew any Republicans. So it's going to really, I think, in the real sense, marginalize it, no matter how much they try to sensationalize it. But I want to get back to my main subject here, which is the detention of American citizens. Before I do, let me give out the number again. I'm live here. I'm not going to stay on that long. I'm nervous because I'm afraid I'm going to get censored. But here I am. 617-396-4958. 617-396-4958. You're welcome to join the conversation. Thank you for TikTok once again turning on my live stream. I'd been suspended for a week. Now I'm definitely McCarthy. I know what you mean by that, but I'm getting notes here from TikTok. And it says Trump has been spreading phony information. No, I don't think so. All right, fine. Then let's have then if you think that Trump is spreading phony information, good. Then I assume you support the audits so we can get to the bottom of what's phony and what's real. Would you say? Or are you trying to do everything you can to stop the audits and discredit them? Fine. Maybe it is phony. Let's get to the truth. That's all I'm asking. That's all I want, the truth. And I can handle the truth. 617-396-4958. 617, yeah, capital was seized by BLM in Oklahoma. That's right. 617-396-4958. You're welcome to join in this segment. 617-396-4958. I can actually take calls here, so it's pretty amazing. All right, so Greg Kelly from Newsmax has released photos of all of those people who are being detained in this gulag-like situation at the Department of Corrections Central Detention Facility in Washington, D.C. These are people who were arrested for trespassing at the U.S. Capitol. They've not been charged. They've not seen any due process. There's been no hearing before judges. They have not been able to face their accusers. In very few cases have they even been able to get lawyers. And furthermore, evidence indicates that they have been, in many of them, have been put in solitary confinement, where they're let out for 1 hour a day. And there are cases where some of them have been beaten and have been, abused. In one case, this guy, I think, who said that he lost an eye. All right. This is more than 500 Americans in this country right now who are being detained and who have not been charged with a crime. This is really something that, I mean, it obviously troubles me, but I would hope that it would trouble many of my friends on the left who complained about this sort of thing for years. I don't hear them now. Are they supportive of this? Why isn't there a national outcry over this? If this can happen to the Trump supporters, it can happen to anyone. This is un-American, frankly. The origins of this, I think, go back to at least 9/11, if not the Oklahoma City bombing of the Murrah building, where, I don't know if people remember this, but after that bombing, there were hearings in the House for the passage of, quote, anti-terrorism legislation. I didn't think it passed. I think there was generally a rejection of that back then on both sides. The leader of that effort, and there's been a movie made about, documentary made about this, was none other than, at the time, New York Representative Charles Schumer. And it would have put in laws that would have essentially suspended the Constitution. It would have suspended habeas corpus rights to anybody accused of, quote, domestic terrorism, unquote. It would have put in regulations that would have allowed the federal government to detain people indefinitely without them facing their accuser, to do so in secret, to do so without any standards of proof, and all under the guise that they were, quote, domestic terrorists. Well, I wonder if some of those laws may not have been passed quietly. I don't know that. I wonder if some of them might not have been marbled into the USA Patriot Act, which was passed as a result of and in reaction to the 9/11 assault on America. And I wonder if those laws, frankly, are the basis of what we're seeing now. People detained in basically what I would describe as a gulag, or as I mean, I'm sorry to be so, inflammatory about it, but to me, it looks like a concentration camp. Anyway, it says here, somebody's texting me, Obama did pass that bill as an executive order. I don't know that. I'm not saying that myself, but it does seem very, very questionable that the federal government now has this kind of power that they can simply detain people for. These are people who had never been accused of crime before. These are, you're trespassing a federal building and you're put in prison for like 6 months. I mean, this is really scary stuff. I'm sorry, but, let me take a look here. This is, Greg Kelly has run photos of all of the people on his show, which is on Newsmax. You can check it out on Gateway Pundit. They have a link to it. And now they're going to have special hearings. We're going to have to hear interminably. And I just hope people see through that. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. I don't want to go further because, quite frankly, I'm hoping to preserve my YouTube channel. And I do believe that I'm staying within the rules here, but you can never tell because those rules are somewhat arbitrary. So I think on that note, yeah, the Gateway Pundit, it's one of my major sources, and it's a good one. Yes, the Hoff brothers, excellent work. Them and Steve Bannon's War Room Pandemic, which is available on Apple, excellent. I listen to it every day. And there are a few others. There's this guy, Captain Seth Keschel, who's doing a good job, and some other people. Yes, those are my sources to answer your question. What are yours? All right, so thanks for listening, everyone. check out my books are available at Amazon Books, or at least they're still there last I checked. My latest book, The Satanic Conspiracy, is available at Amazon Books. It's doing pretty well, frankly. I'm better than usual for me. I have almost 20 published books there. And so I'm grateful for that. And I think I have a good message in that book. It's a quick read. It's a mini book. I'm writing these short books this year. So you might want to check it out. And the program, again, is Monday through Friday. I go live 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, where I have guests or where I have commentary and where I take phone calls. So going forward, you may want to write down this phone number if you'd like to join the program, 617-396-4958. That number, yes, self-published. Some. My biggest book was published by WorldNet Daily, and that's called The Nazi Connection to Islamic Terrorism. Another book was published by Trine Day Press, which is a Whig manifesto. So not all my books are self-published, thank you. But by the way, self-publishing is a wonderful thing. I urge people to self-publish books. I've talked about that in the past. I'm not going to get into it now. Anyway, 617-396-4958. It says you're getting a busy tone. That's strange. I have the number here. I'm open for calls. Maybe there's some funny business going on, but there shouldn't be any busy tone. I don't know what the heck. Anyway, again, thank you for joining me, everyone. I'm going to sign off at this point. God bless you all. God bless America. Let's all stay safe.